Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Busolami Tunwashe. In a world where information is the currency of knowledge and consciousness, history and development has seen journalism evolve from a mere act of curating events to a noble profession, also known as the fourth estate of the realm. But recent decades have been defined by growing censorship and shrinking liberty, no thanks to hypersensitive leaders who can't take criticism from dedicated journalists who, in a bid to do their jobs, have also have the tendency to err on the side of the law. So we ask you, what are your thoughts on the practice of investigative journalism and the level of press freedom in Africa, especially in Nigeria? Feel free to join the conversation and share your thought with us on Twitter at TVC News NG. We take a report right now, and Africa Today will continue. Welcome on board.
We must always fight for
Journalists converged at the secretariat of the NUJ along Moscow Road, and from there the protest march headed to the police headquarters in Port Harcourt.
Solidarity forever. We must always fight for.
Journalists are calling for an end to abuse and illegal arrest and incarceration suffered by practitioners in the line of duty across the country. In a state like Rivers in particular, where the media operates within a very tense political environment, the journalist is constantly a target.
Our members, in course of doing their job, has been harassed, intimidated, assaulted in the different fora. And some of the example we have here, even in Rivers State, we have the case of Martins Gerdon. In course of doing his job, his vehicle was burned down. He was beaten up for no reason. We have the case of Samuel Ogundipe, who was just released recently. He was also detained without trial. We also have the case of one Abere that was detained for 2 years without trial. So the NUJ have looked at the several e-treatment methods to our colleagues and decided to keep today aside for national protest, to draw the attention of those who are behind this act, to also draw the attention of members of the society to what we are passing through.
We don't have any problem with the press as far as Rivers State Command is concerned. That is on record. The command under the able leadership of CP Ahmed Zaki is press friendly, is it not? Yes. We are press friendly. However, the observations you've made will be relayed to the headquarters expeditiously.
Glad to have you back. Before we go into the discussion proper, let us update you on some of the top stories making the rounds in Africa. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has unveiled a 20-member cabinet following his victory in the July 30 elections. It is a smaller cabinet, down from 33 to 20 ministers with no opposition members in the new team, which is 8 new faces. Libya says it will reopen the capital's only functioning airport, closed a week ago amid clashes between rival militias. The death toll from an outbreak of Ebola in eastern DRC has risen to 88 as the virus spread to the city of Mbutebo, a commercial hub of about 1 million people. All right, let us get down to the topic for today. Joining me to take a look at the state of the press in Nigeria is Adenike Aloba. He is a media coordinator, Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism, here with us in the studio. Thanks for joining us, ma'am. And I have on Skype Osai Ojigo, who is a country director, Amnesty International Nigeria. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
It's a ladies' affair today, but we have someone else in our midst. We have Chukwuemeka Eze. He's a lawyer and a lecturer joining us from our Abuja studios. Many thanks for joining us, Chukwuemeka.
Thank you.
Blessed are you among women, aren't you?
I am.
Fantastic. Okay, let us get down to it. Nike, let us start with you. What is press freedom, as basic as it sounds?
Press freedom, to break it down simply, is the freedom to express, the freedom to speech, the freedom to to speak, to express thoughts and opinions, truth and fact, without censorship. I like in your introduction, you talked about how an oversensitive leadership sort of affects press freedom. And at the core of the definition of press freedom is that there's no overreach, there's no stoppage, there's no censorship to the freedom to express oneself. And that really is press freedom.
All right, let us go to the lawyer now. What is press freedom as enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution? Chukwuemeka, this is to you.
Okay, Section 39, subsection 1 provides for right to freedom of expression in Nigeria. That right is not absolute. It is. It has what we call derogatory provisions. But we really know that for the press to perform its job, it has been obligated under Section 22, which provides that the press, radio, television, and other agencies of the mass media shall freely uphold the provisions of Chapter 2 of the Constitution and also hold the government responsible and accountable to the people. So there is no way the press will perform this function without being free. So press freedom is not a new concept. Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, the United Nations General Assembly provided that there should be freedom of opinion, freedom to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas without restriction. And Article 19 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights have a similar provision.
All right, thank you, Chukwuemeka. Let us go to Osai now. Osai, if you can, tell us what are the yardsticks? What are the indicators for measuring press freedom in any society?
Thank you very much. Press freedom actually is something that is provided distinctively to professions like you, those in the media, journalists, media houses. And essentially, it's to protect the right to share information, to receive information, and to impact ideas and information without any sort of interference. And all over the world, it's something that is recognized that when you have an independent and free press, that is one without any sort of influence by the authorities, then you are able to give all members of society an opportunity to be heard and to have that information available in the public sphere.
All right. According to the Reporters Without Borders, there are three major indicators for measuring press freedom, according to the report: pluralism, media independence, respect for the safety of media. Would you want to talk on the pluralism?
Right. If we were to measure by the metrics of pluralism, we would say that Nigeria scores pretty okay when it comes to pluralism. We have quite a robust atmosphere. We have quite a robust sector, that is the media. We have almost every state of the federation has at least one radio and one TV station. And in some states, like Lagos State, for instance, we have multiple. So when it comes to plurality, we will say that we're relatively doing well. And that might about be the only one where we're scoring really high.
That means it's not just government-owned, you have private-owned.
Yes, we have quite a number of private-owned television stations and radio stations. And in recent times, we've also had a lot of online radio, online TV. We have a lot of print media who are online. And so when it comes to the issue of plurality, I think that we will score relatively okay in terms of the parameters that identify a state that is truly observing press freedom.
Okay, the middle one is media independence, but I'd like to take that last. Osai, let me come to you now on the issue of respect for the safety of the media personnel in doing their job. How would you rate Africa?
Wow, rating Africa, it's really wide. It depends on where the journalists are actually placed. There was something we did as Amnesty last year, which was the launch of our Brave campaign. And we saw generally across the continent, there's a repression of journalists, and journalists have been particularly targeted in Africa. But that situation will not be the same in every country that is being evaluated. If we were to look at Nigeria, for example, we've seen a pattern of abuse. We've seen journalists that have been attacked when they are trying to cover events or to cover situations around political issues, around demonstrations, when they are trying to do their role. Some have been beaten, they've had cameras smashed. Quite a few of them have been arrested, as many have been threatened. And this is a pattern that we are seeing continuous, and we expect there to be quite a lot more, because they're becoming quite daring with trying to intimidate journalists with violence.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hold your thought for a jiffy. We'll go on a short break and return with more on Africa Today. Just stay with us. Welcome back. According to Reporters Without Borders, the world press freedom map is getting darker as the media profession is now under threat more than ever. In an era of fake news, libelous statements, and unverified report, journalists often stand the risk of being beaten, jailed, and tortured in the course of doing their job. And I have with me a gentle lady and a man in the house today. I have Nike Osai via Skype and Chukwemeka in Abuja. All right, Chukwemeka, we are going live to you now. We talked about the indicators for measuring press freedom in any society, and one of it is the issue of media independence. Our media, let's stick with Nigeria, are they independent to an extent?
Not very well independent, because many of the owners of these media houses have political interests. And we know that once the owners have political interests, the journalists will work to really satisfy this interest. But Nigeria is a better story compared to some African countries. We have more independent press in Nigeria, but press being independent alone is not enough. Basically, the access to information is still a tall order in Nigeria. So if you are independent and you can't get access to information, that makes investigative journalism the only way forward. And investigative journalism goes with lots of risks. As we know that there is this principle of necessity and proportionality that has been specified by the Human Rights Committee, which is a creation of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. In its General Comment 34, which it made pursuant to Article 19, state parties to the ICCPR are expected to narrow down their restrictions on the media.
All right.
This narrowing down of these restrictions require that they should allow the media to be independent.
All right, Osai, let me come to you now. There is a new flank to this discussion of press freedom in the world today, and that is the issue of media sustainability in terms of resources, having access to the resources to even do the kind of job you want to do, to have the money to go to where you need to go to have the information you need to get the reports out there. What is your take on that? Osai. Oh, I think we have an issue with Osai's audio. We'll try and fix that and reconnect, but over to you now, Nike. What do you feel about that?
Okay, the issue of sustainability is really the core of one of the biggest challenges that the media is currently facing. obviously, what has worked before is no longer working, which is the advertising framework is no longer working. And so it has become important that we begin to rethink the idea or the ideals that support media in Nigeria. Now, to just buttress that point, you raised the issue of media independence and you were asking the lawyer. It is almost impossible to talk about independence of the media without talking about the sustainability of the media. Because
linked.
what really supports the independence of the media is that the media is it's standing alone, so to speak. And I'll explain that. I mean that there are no external influences in regards of money or sponsorship that can affect, which we have to admit is really happening in media in Nigeria.
That is the ideal. The ideal is for you to stand alone. You don't need the money. You don't need the money of the money banks.
Yes.
But is that what is obtainable in Nigeria today?
In Nigeria today, sadly, that is not what is obtainable.
Okay, hold your thought. Let me. We have Osai now. Osai, if you can hear me, the question really is on the issue of media sustainability and the independence of the media. How do you juxtapose that?
I think independence of the media goes to the values the media houses hold. Sustainability has become a big issue, not just for the media, but for all segments of society. And increasingly, we are finding ourselves being more creative in terms of how do we verify the information we have based on the limited resources that we have. But if you look at the ethos of the media profession, your independence should not be linked only to monetary resources that are available to you, but actually a dedication and a conviction that the truth must always prevail, and you must always be in a position to share the facts as it is, regardless of the situation you find yourself. Of course, we're in an era now with online sources that it's a lot more harder for journalists to get on the ground and confirm the information as quickly as online media wants it. It's still something that is based on the value of the individual journalist and the media house.
Okay. With 121 media abuse cases in the DRC, 11 in Eritrea, 8 in Ivory Coast, and we have the Ogundupe and the Abiri case in Nigeria. Are our leaders becoming increasingly insensitive to divergent opinions?
Obviously, that's what the data is saying. That increasingly they are having issues with being able to take issues on the basis of just that. That it's not personal. Obviously, we're increasingly seeing that that's the case. However, more challenging may be the silence of the media itself. It looks like we're better able to talk about other issues and other people than we're able to talk about ourselves. We will not be able to perform our agenda-setting role effectively if we are not able to speak our own truth. And that speaks to some of the attacks that we've seen, that we've heard of. The Press Attack Tracker of the Premium Time Center for Investigative Journalism, which is a platform that tracks and reports attacks on journalists in Nigeria, has reported in this year alone 8 cases. And I know that those are not the only cases that exist. There are quite a number of people. Recently, someone walked into the office and said, oh, she had just finished speaking to a journalist from one of the states I don't want to mention, and that she was almost in tears talking about how they're oppressed and how they're bothered. But the truth is, we do not report our own issues. We don't talk about it. And a platform like the Press Attack Tracker gives the opportunity to individuals, to journalists themselves, to report their own cases. Because if we're not able to censor or speak out against those who want to censor us, we might become very soon, especially in the light of 2019 elections and all the trends that we're beginning to see, it may become impossible.
All right,
for
let us go to Abuja now. Chukwuemeka, during the press freedom celebration this year, Mr. Femi Adesina represented President Muhammadu Buhari, and I'm going to just quote an excerpt from his speech. It says, the media can count on us to keep our word. Keeping their word, talking about creating a free atmosphere where the media is free from harassment and free to do their job. But the president is also asking for you to be fair in your reportage. You are not a reporter, but you are an independent observer. How would you match these words with actions in Nigeria?
Taking Nigeria as a test case, it is evident that things are not very well with our media situation. If we should get back to Article 9 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and its provision, and we mirror it with the Nigerian situation because Nigeria is a state party to the African Charter. Even to the Declaration of Principles on Freedom of Expression arising from Article 9. So you will discover that Nigeria is theoretically at par with what ideal situation. But in practice, if you read what happens, because to hold a journalist for 2 years in detention, underground detention, that will give you the outlook of the Nigerian situation. So basically, I don't want to begin to judge a particular government, but what I know is that all governments fear the media, and there is no government that has not tormented the media in any way. Now, if you look at the bills before the National Assembly, the hate speech bill, you will discover that basically, if those bills are passed into law, it will be very difficult to practice journalism in this country.
All right, let us go to Osai now.
The Nigeria Press Council bill, also before the National Assembly, has onerous provisions.
All right, Osai, we have in Nigeria quite a lot of press law and media law. We have the Penal Code Act, which is talking about section 416 to 421, talking about seditions and inciting hatred. You have the Official Secret Act in Nigeria. You have the Newspaper Amendment Act. Quite a lot of them. You have the NBC, and now with the proposed bill going on with the National Assembly. Many people will say the press in Nigeria is perhaps overregulated. What's your thought?
Excuse me.
Yes.
I think that the attempt to pass further legislation against press in Nigeria is actually something we should reject. The press actually does their work well when they have the freedom in order to go to the areas they need to go to, and they get the clearances for those assessments. But we must not forget that this is actually a fundamental human right that is protected by the Constitution, and the Constitution is the main law. And no matter what any law that is proposed that attempts to limit the rights that has been conferred by the Constitution should be frowned against, but in effect would have no part to play, because you cannot try to use your local law in order to also circumvent international human rights standards, which Nigeria has freely adhered to. And so any attempts to try and push in more laws to limit journalists or to try to get them to reveal their sources against internationally accepted standards of journalistic practices must be frowned against. The current law framework that allows for professionalism should be protected, but we should not forget that this is a fundamental human right.
Okay. Anika, the last question is going to you now. Where do we draw the line as professionals? I've sat on, in your place as a reporter, as an editor, as a news anchor. So I've been there, so I know that sometimes we are not really perfect. So how do we draw the line?
Okay, very quickly, adhering to the ethics of the profession as individual practitioners is important, so that you're not just upholding the ideology of your station, but you know and understand the ethics of the profession and you practice accordingly. That would go a long way to help. It is also important, I think it's becoming increasingly important even, that journalists begin to understand what provisions they have in the law, especially when they are arrested and when they are detained. They should begin to understand what provisions they have in the law and also be able to access legal aid that helps them to fight these cases.
Okay, quickly now, Chukwuemeka, let's just have your thoughts on this. Where do we draw the line in terms of social responsibility of the media and the hate speech and the fake news? Are we doing our jobs well as media men and women?
I think this is where the Nigeria Press Organization should come in. The Lauren Declaration of 1998 contains sufficient provisions to ensure that journalists do their work well. And Merrill, a media writer, says that a virtuous journalist should emulate the provisions in the Republic by Plato, wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. These should be the cornerstones of a journalist.
All right, I think it's a good place to
I
leave
want the
it.
media to actually key into all this.
All right, I must thank you for coming on Africa today,
Pleasure.
Nike, Osai, and Chukwuemeka. Amidst demand for independent press comes the need for responsible journalism, where the media profession is said to be walking through a minefield at midnight just to ensure that the mission to tell the truth remains alive against all odds. In truly achieving sustainable development, leaders in Africa and around the world must come to terms with the role journalists play as partners in progress and helping to shape a just society for all. That's our package for today, but don't forget to join the conversation on Twitter at TVC News NG. Until the next one, I am Busolami Chunwashi. And always remember, African can only get better. Bye for now. Thank you for coming.